Thank you for the introduction and welcome everybody to today's presentation. Our 2026 release is just around the corner. We are calling this one Vega. It is scheduled for November 12th, so basically 1 week from today. And like all our recent releases, this one also has a ton of new functionality and new features. And this time, instead of cramming everything into a single presentation, because there's a lot to cover here, we've decided to break this up into a series of smaller presentations focused on the different areas of improvement. And today, I'll be taking you through some of the highlights in the data management and mapping applications. This includes 2 partnerships with LAS Worx and Ubiterra ZoneView, changes to Zone Manager, WellBase, spreadsheet imports, as well as changes we have made to make our add-in for ArcGIS Pro more useful, and other changes to GeoAtlas that we hope will positively impact your everyday work. All right, so let's kick this off with our integration with LAS Worx. If you're not aware, LAS Worx is this great tool for log curve data management, basically a complete solution for your log curve data management. They do a lot of things, including consolidating logs from a variety of different sources and storing them and managing them, also cleaning up and standardizing your log data. And we've partnered with them, and their plan tool now has a dedicated GeoGraphix block. The LAS Worx plan lets you create flows that can source log data from a folder or a repository. They're also integrated with the TGS log library. So you can get data from any of those places, and then this GeoGraphix block will automatically put those logs into your GeoGraphix project. This can be any project. We've made it so that even if the project is not active, you can still add your log data to it. Instead of just talking about it, let me give you a quick peek at how this works. Here I have the LAS Worx window open to the plan module. The green GeoGraphix block is the new addition here that allows you now to automate log data delivery into GeoGraphix projects. Plan works by arranging all of these various available blocks into a flow. You can grab these blocks here from the right hand side, drag drop them into this grid here. This, for example, is the TGS blocks that lets you connect to TGS servers. You can search for logs there. Data flows from one block to the other following these blue arrows. So I can connect this LAS output to this GeoGraphix block, for example, and any kind of LAS files that this block finds from the TGS server based on my search criteria, those every time the block is run, those LAS files will be output into the GeoGraphix project. My flow is pretty simple. What I'm doing is I'm taking this source folder from my hard drive. This could be a network drive, wherever the folder has some LAS files. It's about 34 files in total, and these files we'll pick up on these files. That's what this block will do, and then these files will flow into GeoGraphix, where we'll set up which project these need to go into. To do that, within the GeoGraphix block, I can select any GeoGraphix project on any server that's there on my network. Right, so all of my projects are listed here. I select the one I want to add this data to. I can provide the name of the curve set that I want to add this data to. Again, I'm calling this LAS Worx. This could be anything you want to call it. If a well has a curve set with this name already, we'll add data to that curve set. If a well does not have this curve set or a curve set with this name, we will create it. The curve set will be created based on whatever LAS file is being imported. So that will be the start, stop, and step for that curve set. We've also added an option where you can import data into the field data curve set. So regardless of the name that you provide here, if a well exists in your database and it has curve data, and one of those curve sets is assigned as the curve data field data curve set, the incoming log data with this option turned on will go into the field data curve set. So regardless of whatever curve set name you give here, if the well has a field data curve set, the LAS data will be read into that field data curve set. Now, if a well does not have any curve data, or for some reason we can't find the field data curve set for that well, then we'll create a new curve set, and that will be the name of that curve set. So you can think of this as a fallback curve set name when you have this option turned on. So if you don't find field data curve set for whatever reason we can't access it, we'll create a new curve set, call it this name, and put curve data into that curve set. Now, when you're putting data into existing curve sets, you obviously will have other curve data in there. So what happens if you're bringing in the same log into a curve set, an existing curve set? These are your curve conflict handling options. You can still add the curve as a copy. You could skip it. You can overwrite it. You can overwrite the entire curve set. So delete everything in the curve set and create a new curve set with only the log data in the LAS file that's coming in. We've also added two new options called merge. This is different from our merged and spliced curve sets because these are not pointer curves. What we will do is, if a curve already exists, if a curve of the same name already exists, let's say you're bringing in GR into an existing curve set and there is already a GR curve in there, we will merge the two curves into a single curve. So wherever the existing curve is null, it doesn't have any values, and the incoming curve does have values, we'll take the values from the incoming curve and put them in the existing curve. Now, of course, there could be areas of overlap. So in those areas of overlap, which values do we prefer? That's why we have two options here. Merge prefer existing, which means that in the areas of overlap, we will keep the values that are already present in the database. We will ignore the new values. The second option is merge prefer new, which means that in those areas of overlap, we will prefer the new values. So we'll overwrite the existing values. Remember, whatever setting you select here, the null values in the existing curve will always be overwritten with data from the incoming curve. And null values in the incoming curve will never override data in the existing curve. So that's how these two new options work. And we've tried to make it available across GeoGraphix, not just in this LAS Worx block that we have built for LAS Worx plan, but when you're importing LAS data from our regular LAS importer, or you're bringing in ASCII files from our new ASCII importer, spreadsheet importer for log data, you can access both these new options. You'll see them there as well. So that's really it. That's how simple it is to set up. You just select your project, give it a curve set name, select whether you want to import that into a field data curve set or not, choose your conflict resolution options. Now, when you want to run this flow, I'll go in here and hit the play to trigger it manually, but you could also put this on a timer. So it could be running every 8 hours, every 4 hours, every hour, whatever the frequency of this log update might be. And that's really it. All the log data from this folder will flow into your selected GeoGraphix project. Right now, this is just about writing data into GeoGraphix. But we are working on being able to take curve data from GeoGraphix. This could be your model curves or any other curve data in GeoGraphix. So we are working on taking log data from a GeoGraphix project and push it back into the LAS Worx ecosystem as well. So that's an exciting new integration that we have added to GeoGraphix. And staying with third-party connections, let's look at our next partnership. This one is with Ubiterra and their ZoneView application. ZoneView is a web-based geosteering tool, and our integration allows GeoGraphix, which is your main interpretation backend, to send well data over to your ZoneView projects. This is designed to cut down on the setup time by basically eliminating the need to manually export data out of GeoGraphix and importing all of that into ZoneView to populate your ZoneView project. I'm going to switch over to a demo to show you how this works in practice. I have logged into my ZoneView app here, and you can see I have several projects. I will be using this Williston project to show you the GeoGraphix ZoneView connection. In this project, I've added just this one well. The well itself doesn't have any data in here yet. No log data, no tops, no surveys. And that is basically my objective. I will take data from GeoGraphix and populate that directly into GeoGraphix without resorting to manual imports and exports and stuff like that. On the left hand side, I have my GeoGraphix WellBase open. I've selected the well, which is the same well in ZoneView that I have here in ZoneView. If I go back to my project here, you'll notice the API number for both the wells is the same. Now, the first thing you have to do to be able to connect ZoneView and GeoGraphix is you need access to your web API key. This is what we use to connect GeoGraphix to your ZoneView project. Inside WellBase, in the Import Export tab, here's my ZoneView sign-in. This is where I will paste that API key that I get from over there. And once I have that and I hit sign in, this allows me then to connect to ZoneView So I'm able to exchange data between the two applications. Once you've signed in, I hit transfer to zone view. The selected well is going to be my source well. I can always go in and change that. So if this is not the well that I was looking for, and I wanted to send something else, I can always just, without having to select it outside, I can use this change button here to select a new well. We do allow searching within this window. You can apply all of these different filters that you have available to narrow down your search and really find quickly the well that you're looking for. Before I do the transfer, let me quickly show you what data I have available for this particular well. I've got some formation tops that I want to move over. I've got my directional survey, and I have a proposed survey, and I'd like to send both of them over into GeoGraphix. I also have some log data that I want to send over. So while I geosteer in zone view, I have all of this information available for me. Now, to move this data over, I'm just going to go transfer to zone view. Because I have this well selected, this will be automatically set up as my source well. I'm now connecting to the project, to the zone view application. Once I'm connected, I have a list of all my projects available. We're going to go over the Williston demo project, target well. There's the API for the well. You do need to select a well bore because when you're moving log data over into zone view, they associate that with the well bore. So that's my well bore selection. And then I'm going to come in here and choose a strat column. Again, all of this information defined already in the zone view project. GeoGraphix does not allow you to create a project or create a well, not yet anyway. This is something that we are working on and will be available in the next part of this upgrade of this integration. But for now, you can see all of the data that you have in your zone view application and make those appropriate selections. Now, once you've selected the well, the target well, and the source well, you can then now choose which data you want to transfer. So if you want to transfer formation tops, you can just go into the Select Tops button. It'll show me all the picks that I have available for this particular well. I move them over, hit Update, and that's going to populate this grid. Now, in Zone View, we've got a strat column defined, and I do need to map which formation, kind of goes to what formation in zone view. So which GeoGraphix formation maps to which zone view formation. I'm going to say this is the Bakken, this is the Dakota. We will call this, just go in and make these mappings. And once you have these mappings set up, that's really it. Same thing for your log curves. You go in, you don't have to send all of the log curves that you have available. You can pick and choose which ones you want. Let's say I want the gamma ray, the DT, and maybe the row B. I'll just move these three over. Any curve set that this well has will be listed here. So you're not limited to just the field data curve set. You can send data from any curve set available for that particular well. Those are the three logs that I'm going to send over, and then I go to the survey tab right here. I can transfer the actual drilled survey, which is the survey tab right here. I can also transfer proposed surveys. So I could, a particular survey that I've identified with an ID, I can choose that. I could say send all my proposed surveys or just send my active survey, active proposed survey. I'm just going to say proposed one. So I'm going to be transferring these 5 formation tops, 3 log curves, and 2 surveys over into zone view. So begin transfer. It's going to go through, transfer the formation tops, transfer the log curves, and it transfers the surveys. I do get a detailed log file of what was transferred, whether the transfer was successful or failed. It'll give you a reason of why it failed. And then you can go back to your zone view application, and we'll just go back to open that well again, and now you're going to start to see data coming in here. There we go. There's my formation tops. Go on to my surveys. There's all my surveys here. That's my actual survey with the grid north reference, and here's my proposed one survey, which is that proposed survey from that proposed tab. We should also have log data coming in here as well. There's my last file with my log data. So all of that information that I wanted to populate into GeoGraphix is now available there. So there you have it. A simple one-click transfer of your tops, logs, and surveys. No need to export CSV files or LAS files or anything like that. Just select the data you want to transfer, click transfer, and you're done. And this is still just the first phase of this integration, where we've enabled well tops, logs, and surveys to move to a zone view project. The next phase is to enable the transfer of grids over to zone view, as well as receive interpretation data back from zone view into GeoGraphix. So keep an eye out for that in a future update. Let's move on now to some improvements within GeoGraphix. First, a few changes to Zone Manager, especially around how we interact with isomap layers. A big part of a lot of our users' workflow is around creating isomap layers out of zone data. To make that process easier, we've now introduced templates for the bulk layer create in Zone Manager. This means you can set up your layer create once and then not have to repeat that every time you want to update or create those same layers again. We've also made the dialog a floating window, so you can actually interact with the zone data in the back, make edits, even maybe import a new attribute into your zone, create layers, put them on a map. If you think you have some errors you need to fix them directly in Zone Manager because the window is still open. You can just create your layers again after you've made your edits or changes that you need to make into your zone data. We've also made changes to how you can set your isomap grid and display settings. Apart from being able to use predefined isomap templates, you can now customize those grid parameters and display settings straight from the bulk create interface. Creating layers is one thing, but you can also use templates and bell filters when importing isomap layers into Zone Manager. Again, the intention is to cut down on the repeated setups so you can get to your data quicker and easier. There are plenty of enhancements to WellBase too. First of all, performance. We have sped up well data import by 2 to 3 times. So those gigantic well data files that you get from your data vendors, they should come into GeoGraphix a little quicker now. We've added templates to spreadsheet imports. So if you have a predefined, pre-formatted spreadsheet or spreadsheets that you bring in pretty regularly, you don't have to manually map them each time you load one of those kinds of spreadsheets. We've also made it so that if you change data in your spreadsheet, let's say you add a column or fix a typo, add a formula in a cell, those changes to your source file are reflected immediately in the spreadsheet loader. You don't have to reload the file or lose your mapping at all. In fact, you don't even need to click anywhere. As soon as you save your file, the changes are immediately reflected in the spreadsheet loader interface. Other enhancements include the ability to protect and unprotect data for multiple wells at the same time, change filters without deactivating the active one before you select your next one, so you don't have to wait for the filter to come off and then apply the filter that you need. You can just change it now. We have also made this change, by the way, in Zone Manager, so you can just swap filters in Zone Manager or WellBase without having to deactivate the previous filter. It just makes the whole thing more seamless, and hopefully you can get to the data you need a little bit faster. You can also set your default legal type now, so when you're importing wells into a project where the legal description is not congressional, which is what we defaulted to, your new wells will now reflect that. They will default to whatever setting you set for your project, so you don't have to go back and fix these legal descriptions one well at a time. And a lot of other enhancements that I just don't have the time to go through right now. Okay, let's now move on to mapping. And the first thing I want to talk about here is the improvements to our add-in for ArcGIS Pro. We introduced the add-in in 2024.2 back in April of this year. I'm very excited by the response we got from almost everybody who interacts with ArcGIS Pro and GeoGraphix as a part of their everyday workflows. If you're not aware, let me give you a quick look at the add-in and the changes that we've made to it in this release. Okay, so here in my ArcGIS Pro project, I have some lease data for my project. That's these colored polygons that you see in the middle of my map in ArcGIS Pro. If I want to see this information in GeoGraphix, in the past, I would have had to export these polygons as shapefiles and then import them into GeoGraphix. The GeoGraphix add-in for ArcGIS Pro really streamlines that process. if I want to move these layers into GeoGraphix, all I need to do is now select them. And then from the GVERSE GeoGraphix ribbon up here, I have access to the GeoGraphix plugin, which can not only read data from GeoGraphix, so pull layer data out of GeoGraphix into ArcGIS Pro, but it can also write to GeoGraphix. I'm going to click here. It's going to take these selected layers, which is my lease and my expiring leases, and it is going to get it ready to move it into my GeoGraphix project. Now, once that interface pops up in a second, you can then choose what do you want to call that layer when you move it over into GeoGraphix. And it's called leases in your ArcGIS Pro project. Maybe you want to call it the same thing. Maybe you want to call it something different. There's my coordinate reference system. We will take care of all the coordinate reference system transformations. We know the GeoGraphix project CRS. We obviously know the CRS in ArcGIS Pro. So all of those things will be taken care of. You can also choose, if you're afraid that you're going to blow the extents of your project, you can always say do not add layers outside the extent of my project. You can crop a layer to the project extents as well. And this override flag, in case you already have layers that are called the same thing, maybe you transferred in the past ones before. So this will just go in and update, override those layers. I hit OK, and it's going to go through. Layers are going to be converted into GeoGraphix friendly format, and now they will be available for me to put on my map. So I'll go down here. Here's my leases. Here's my leases expiring. Click OK, and that then is going to add both those layers into my GeoGraphix project, and I see them here again. They show up exactly where they're supposed to, and we try to retain as much of the display information as possible. So we try to take care of the colors, the line thicknesses, the annotations, all of the settings that you had applied over on your Pro project. So that's really how the ArcGIS Pro plugin for GeoGraphix works both ways. You can also pull data into ArcGIS Pro, and we released this back in 2024.2, so April of this year. So it's been out there for a while. But the biggest change that we have made in this release in 26.1 is that in the released versions, in the 24.2 version, these layers that I got here, these leases and these expiring leases layers that I got here, they were kind of like images. I mean, so you could still interact with the features, like you could hide and show the features. So any feature layer that you sent over, the features in there, you could still hide and show individual features, but you couldn't really do much else with them. You couldn't interact with them. So that's really the biggest change that we've done. Now, when the layers come over, so if I switch this to my active layer, I can actually interact with these polygons. I can select these polygons individually because they are now individual entities within GeoGraphix. I can even copy paste them into other layers. Also, any attributes, any data attributes that you have in the Pro project, they are also carried over into GeoGraphix. So any information in that feature in Pro will come in over into GeoGraphix as well. So that's a big deal, because now when you bring stuff over, you can actually use them in GeoGraphix like you would use any other entity, including being able to consume these features directly into any GeoGraphix workflow, just like you would any other entity. So for example, I've got a structure map in the background for my leases. Maybe I want to do some grid statistics. This is a structure map, so I don't know how much sense it would be to kind of calculate an average depth of average elevation of that structure within my lease polygons. But this could be any grid, right? This could be a thickness grid, a porosity grid, whatever interpretation data that you have in a gridded form. Because I can now interact with these polygons that I just moved over from ArcGIS Pro, I can right click here and I can say calculate grid statistics, and it will, just like it does for any polygon entity in any GeoGraphix layer, it is able to pick up on those polygons, and I can kind of highlight them one by one, and I can calculate for any grid that I have. Let's say I've got the Red River here and I wanted to do an average elevation in each of these polygons. I hit calculate. It's going to go through. It's going to give me that average elevation. Again, like I said, this could be any grid that you have that you want to be able to use within your GeoGraphix workflows. Of course, once you have it here, you get save it as a report. You could create a new layer, a landnet layer with this information encoded in there. Again, once you have the layer over here, you can consume it just like you would any other layer. So that's one big change that we have done in just any layer that's coming. And this is not just true for layers that are coming in from ArcGIS Pro, but also layers that you're streaming in from a WMS server or an ArcGIS enterprise server, feature server. These features you are now able to consume within GeoGraphix. The other thing, similar thing, but done using slightly differently, is being able to take your raster grids. So if you've got raster grids in ArcGIS Pro, you can now convert them. When you transfer them over, if you use this right raster grids button, it will convert that to an actual isomap layer in GeoGraphix. So a gridded isomap layer, again, the idea being that those raster grids with the Z information available, we want to move them over into GeoGraphix, but we want to move them in a way that they're not just a picture that you're looking at, but you are able to consume those, use those in your quantitative workflows. So basically this means that you can not only transfer layers to GeoGraphix, but you can now also consume them straight into your GeoGraphix workflows. This is not all. We've also extended layers transfers to include conditional pies and drainage ellipses, so you can now take these kinds of layers and move them from GeoGraphix projects into ArcGIS Pro projects. We've expanded support for more image formats, including PNG files and some very obscure image formats as well. We keep running into new ones, new image formats, and we're trying to make sure we can render as many of these as possible. We've enabled transparencies to these image layers now as well. So when you put an image layer in GeoGraphix, you can now add transparencies to them, partial transparencies, so you can see through them. This was something we could not do when we first released this add-in, but we've enabled that support in 26.1. Another important change is that if you create a layer from a server which requires you to log in with a username and password, you can choose to save that login info into the layer itself. This information is encrypted, so nobody can get your login info. The passwords are stored securely. What this lets us do, though, is that because the credentials are stored in the layer, anybody can put these layers onto their maps and view that data. We use the stored credentials to get that data from the server. However, we understand sometimes this information is sensitive and you don't want just anybody viewing it. So if you don't save your login info with the layer, anybody who puts it on a map will be required to authenticate every time the layer is rendered. So if they have the right access, they will be able to see that data. Otherwise, it will not be available to them. On the GeoAtlas side, a few key improvements. Most notably, we now allow updates to well layers from any AOI. So you're in one AOI, you can now update layers in other AOIs, even if that is not the active AOI. This, I think, will be very helpful for people who need to update dozens and dozens of layers across their projects every day. This is available one layer at a time, so you can update individual layers. We've also enabled this in the bulk layer update. Both the bulk layer update and the layer history dialog, which we've redone a little bit, they both now list the filter associated with each well layer, which means you can quickly determine which layers need to be updated and just update them from one spot without really needing to switch AOIs or asking people to unload those layers or any of that. Unload those layers just so that you can see which filter that layer uses. You can now kind of go in and update the layers that you need to update regardless of which AOI they may be in. When creating or updating well layers, we now have an improved interface. Things are more organized, more visible. There's no tabs to click around and find your filter or the other settings that you have for your layer. We've also added new entities like proposed surveys as their own entities, so you can put those on your maps side by side with the actual survey. We've enabled data posting along the well bore for well data that does not have an XY component with it. This was limited just to data points like formation peaks or perfs, which you could post along the well data because they have location data relative to the well bore stored in the database. We've extended this to every data type for the well, so you can post anything like from the well header or any other part of the well record. You can post that along the well bore instead of just at the surface location or the bottom hole location. On the map view, we now have interactive rotation, so you can grab any editable entity or more than one entity, multiple entities. Just turn on the rotate tool, and you can interactively rotate them to how you think they should be. We've also introduced a select wells within a buffer feature. This is similar to selecting wells within a polygon, but you don't have to define a polygon, select or draw a polygon. You just select an entity, any entity on any layer on the map. You give a buffer distance, and all the wells that fall within that buffer around that entity, could be a line, could be a polygon, could be a point. All the wells that fall within that defined buffer will be selected for you. Finally, we are introducing favorite entities. This is fully customizable. You can add whatever entities you rely on every day when importing shapefiles or just interacting with these entities on your maps. You don't have to depend on the most frequently used entities anymore, which has not always been true. I mean, it's been a static list. And a lot of those entities are not really the most frequently used entities. But you don't have to depend on that anymore, because you can customize this list to match whatever entities you come across every day. Your favorite entities will always appear at the top of the entity tree, so you can get to them without having to dig through the entire tree. And again, like I said, a lot of other enhancements that I haven't had the time to go through that are also included in the mapping applications. So that's a quick overview of what's coming this November in the new GeoGraphix 2026.1 release. Again, as a reminder, it releases November 12. You can see there's a lot in here. I certainly wasn't able to go through all of these new features in any great detail. If you are interested to learn more, please reach out, and we'll be happy to set up a call and walk you through this stuff in a little bit more detail. And with that, thank you very much for attending, and I will see you guys out there. Thank you.